We continue to follow the breaking news out of the Middle East. The U.S. is working to identify exactly which militia group carried out a deadly drone attack on a small U.S. outpost in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. troops and injured more than 30 others. This happening near the border with Syria and Iraq. And joining me now to talk about this, CNN military analyst and retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton and former Middle East negotiator for the State Department, Aaron David Miller. Colonel, I guess let me go to you first. Your reaction to this deadly attack on U.S. troops. There have been these moments that we've seen over the last several weeks where these Iran-backed militias have been wreaking havoc, have been a nuisance to U.S. forces in the region. But obviously this time it's much more serious and it may bring about a U.S. response.
Yeah, I think it certainly will, Jim. Good to be with you again. This is a really serious escalation at this point, and what it has done, because of the deaths of at least 3 American service members and the injuries of 30 plus soldiers, it is clearly raising the ante here. And the group that did this, whichever one it was, is clearly asking for a response from the U.S. And what that, of course, means, it remains to be seen. But one of the key suspects here is probably Kataib Hezbollah, the group in Iraq that is an main Iranian proxy there. It could be one of the other Iranian proxies, but it clearly points to a possible escalation in that direction.
And before I go to Aaron, Colonel, just a quick follow-up. Can you tell us more about this outpost known as Tower 22 in Jordan and the military installations that are located in that general area? This sounds a bit of a remote outpost, and I wonder if it raises the question about security at some of these installations where U.S. forces may be vulnerable to this sort of thing.
Yeah, it certainly does raise a lot of security questions. And of course, force protection, as we call security in the military, is a key and dominant mission requirement for U.S. forces there. But this base, Tower 22, is right near the base of Al Tanf, which is in Syria. So it's Tower 22 is right on the Jordan-Syria border, but it's also close to what they call the tri-point, where 3 countries come together, in this case Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. And because of that, it's in a unique position where it can oversee a lot of the smuggling routes that have been there for thousands of years between all of the different areas within Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. And it is at a very strategic location, has provided a lot of supplies to Al Tanf, which is the primary base that in this part of Syria that has been used against the ISIS forces that we fought against over the last few years.
And Aaron, President Biden has been briefed on the attack. He's released a statement vowing to hold those responsible accountable. We're already seeing calls from Republican lawmakers for a strike inside Iran. As a matter of fact, we talked to Congressman Adam Smith at the top of the hour, and he said that perhaps some sites in Iran should be considered for some sort of proportionate response. What might that do to the situation that obviously has been simmering with a lot of tensions over the last several weeks? I mean, obviously things could get way more escalated if something like that happens.
Whether we're on the cusp, and thanks for having me, Jim. It's great to be here, Colonel Leighton. Whether we're on the cusp of a regional war or not, I don't know. We're almost 5 months in. February 7th will be the 5th month of this war. And you're looking at controlled escalation to a large degree across the Israeli-Lebanese border, and even these attacks against American bases and troops in Iraq and Syria. I think the administration on this one has options that run from bad to worse. And I think there are only 2 options. They're going to respond. The question is, are they going to respond against Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps actual forces in Iraq and or Syria, or, as Adam Smith suggested, are they going to risk something that this administration and none of its predecessors have done? And that is to strike Iranian assets in Iran proper, which for the Iranians is a self-proclaimed red line. Whether or not that proves to be the case, we may actually begin to find out. The other option, of course, is to strike fast boats and Iranian naval assets in the Gulf. But the administration, understandably, given the regional hotspots that the Israeli-Hamas war has generated, has a certain amount of risk aversion in their own responses. I mean, they've responded actually to 160, 170 attacks since October. Maybe a tenth of those we've responded to. I think on this one, however, you're going to see some fireworks, and I still think this is not going to trip the U.S. and Iran into a major confrontation, but it certainly raises the stakes.
Colonel, what do you think? Can the U.S. hit Iran without hitting inside Iranian territory, as Aaron is suggesting, and perhaps strike a balance that sends a message without getting things out of control?
I think it's imperative that the U.S. does that, Jim. And, as Aaron was pointing out, this is, there's several options here. Most of them are very bad. But the best option of a bad series of choices is going to be to hit something that is very important to the Iranians, but it is not something that strikes at the core of the regime or at the core of some of their capabilities, but it would serve as a warning to them. So something like attacking naval assets in the Persian Gulf, something like that kind of goes up to the line. But they could do that, or they could stick with hitting the proxies in either Iraq or Syria. But if there's a hand that is hidden, that is revealed for, let's say, the contact from Tehran that perhaps directed this attack, then they have to consider going all that way to send a message to the Iranians.
And Aaron, while all of this is unfolding, the president had sent the CIA director to Europe in the hopes of reviving these hostage negotiations to get some kind of deal going between Israel and Hamas to simmer things down. I wonder, do you think the Iranians were trying to blow this up? They were trying to have an impact on this process? What do you think? And could this, could this get worse if we don't see a deal reached?
Well, it's definitely going to get worse. It's going to get worse before it gets worse, I suspect. But I usually am pretty knowingly negative on these matters. Bill Burns has a very close relationship with Mossad Director David Barnea. The Israelis actually, I think, are under an enormous amount of pressure, rising pressure from the hostage families, growing casualties, the IDF's understanding that they may well have reached the limit of the most intense kinetic phase. And a pause, 2 months, which the Israelis could resume against the Hamas leadership, would in fact do a couple things. It would allow a surge, not a dribble, of humanitarian assistance, which is badly needed in the Gaza. It would free the 100+ hostages that remain, and the return of the 20 or 30 that the Israelis believe are no longer living, either killed on October 7th, their bodies taken to Gaza to trade for Palestinian prisoners, or died in captivity. I think it would offer some respite, badly needed. Will what's happening with respect to this attack in Tanf derail that? I don't think so. I think if Hamas and the Israelis both want to pause, then the U.S. is well positioned, I think, right now to try to deliver one. But remember, Middle East negotiations only have two speeds, Jim, is slow and slower. So this may take some time.
All right, Colonel Layden, Aaron David Miller, thanks so much to both of you. Really appreciate the insights on an important night. A lot of critical things happening, I think, in the next couple of days ahead. We'll stay on top of it. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.